and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled that you can join us today. We are going to be having a great conversation talking about all of those kind of crazy moments in our life where we need to make some really tough decisions regarding dementia and how do we work our way through all of that. But before I introduce our guest, I always like to just give a couple of shout outs. First is to the Mark Arneson Band. They are just so wonderful and let us use their opening music called Clarion Call. And you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms if you like. Also, if you are new to Alzheimer's Speak, some of you might not be aware of why we started. And bottom line, my own mom lived with dementia for 30 years. And I just felt like we needed to connect with more people regarding services, products, and tools that are out there. And that is our goal. So maybe, just maybe, you can be our next guest as well. I want to do a couple of shout outs. One is, if you haven't checked out Alzheimer's Speaks website, please do so. We've updated that. In fact, we have one page that lists all of our free resources that you can access. So please head over there. And if you go to the public events, I do have some free public events coming up. One is on Halloween. If you are living in Minnesota, in the Minnetonka area, come for our screening and talk back of A Timeless Love that is sponsored by the Dementia Friendly Minnetonka Group. November 11th, we're going to be doing a webinar with Volunteers for Seniors talking about living with dementia. And if you've got some questions, you can post those ahead of time. And then also on December 8th, we'll be doing a live program with Artist Senior Living in Woodbury, Minnesota. And that one, I'm going to be discussing family gatherings, events, travel, and kind of getting from that frustration and discouragement of getting together to joyful moments. You know, how do you adapt and make change so that everything goes smooth? We are going to hear from the Footbar Walker, which is highlighted by the Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. And we will be right back with our guest.
I love the Footbar Walker, and let me tell you why. It is the option for my toolbox that I've been waiting for. Let's be honest, there are some clients who, despite our best rehab efforts, just aren't able to return to performing a sit-to-stand transfer on their own. Now I can offer my caregivers an easier, safer option that doesn't involve hoisting their loved one up from a sitting position. I don't recommend this walker for all of my clients, but I do recommend this walker for those caregivers looking for an easier, safer option with transfers. I would also encourage other therapists to add this walker to their toolbox. It's kind of like having my own mobile parallel bars for the client to pull up on. Whether it's a family caregiver at home helping a loved one with Parkinson's or dementia, CNAs in a long-term care facility assisting their patients, or therapists adapting to client and caregiver-specific needs, we now have a very safe and effective option to offer in the Footbar Walker. Check this product out at thefootbarwalker.com. That's it for today from Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Have a great day, and don't forget, if you can't do it, adapt it.
Okay, so we are back and we are going to be talking with gerontologist Rachael Wonderlin, who is internationally recognized as a dementia care consultant. She owns her own senior living consulting company, and she runs a popular blog and podcast, both by the same name, called Dementia By Day. Rachael is the author of the new book, The Caregiver's Guide to Memory Care in Dementia Communities. Well, Rachael, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I remember meeting you at a conference. I think it might have been down in Alabama or Indiana or one of those states. And it was just such a pleasure listening to you speak and kind of guide the audience through so many tricky situations. So I'm thrilled you're on the show. Welcome today.
Thanks for having me.
To start off, I always like to ask everyone if they've been personally touched by dementia in their own family or circle of friends. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I've actually never really had anyone in my life with living with dementia. I just found that I really had a passion for working with older adults and in particular people living with cognitive impairments. So that's how I got into this space. I got my master's in gerontology in 2013 and have essentially been in the space since, and really even before that was always just loved geriatrics in general.
Yeah, me too. I was always drawn to the elderly. Well, let's just kind of crack the nut wide open and talk first. How do families figure out what the heck is the right care for a person with dementia? And does it vary depending on the type of dementia that they have?
It does vary, but what I always encourage families to look at is what is best, probably personality wise, for the person living with dementia and the family. So if you have someone who's a big extrovert, like myself, I would not fare very well in a home care environment. So I would do much better if I was able to move to a senior living community and be with other people around my age or living with the same kinds of cognitive impairments that I have. Depending on the type of dementia, the only big difference is, I would say, if somebody is very sexually aggressive or just physically aggressive, if they have a type of frontotemporal dementia, like a behavioral variant FTD, that may be something where they're not a good fit in a senior living community. But otherwise, I always would suggest looking at adult daycare, looking at assisted living that has a dementia care wing or hallway or other building, and then assessing from there.
Okay. So when people are, going through this whole process, I think a lot of times they just assume one community is kind of like another because, well, it's a memory care and so is this one. Are there differences between them that you see, or do they stick pretty close to a fine line?
They are very different depending on the company. Some companies don't really have a dementia care program. I work with senior living companies to help them build programs. And I found that, not everybody even has a program. So sometimes companies are coming to me when they don't have a dementia care program. They offer quote unquote memory care, but they don't actually have any real programming plan for the residents.
Mm-hmm. I've found that, so I'm glad to hear that from you too, because I think it really is confusing for families out there to know the questions to ask or what to look for. And, now that they can be back in a live tour again, it's just so overwhelming when people get that diagnosis, and you don't know what you don't know till you find out you don't know it, and then that's usually a kind of a raw slap in the face there. Let's talk. You had mentioned, adult day and a couple other things. What are some of the care options that are available to assist somebody living with dementia beyond a nursing home? Because I know so often, a lot of times people think of dementia and they think right away nursing home is the only option, but there's a lot in between that section there.
It depends somewhat on where you live, but a skilled nursing facility is a very specific type of care. It is typically for people who have more physical needs. So a lot of people living with dementia live in assisted living. And assisted living, again, depends on your state, what they call it. Generally, most states call it assisted living. And then there is a type of, we call a locked unit or a secure unit that would be their dementia care part of their building. Maybe they have a standalone dementia care that they offer for residents.
Okay. Is there any difference in, someone calling themselves a dementia care versus a memory care unit?
No, I like to say dementia care just because not everybody with dementia has a memory problem. And I think it's a bit of a misnomer. It makes it sound like we're helping to care for somebody's memory, and we're really not. We're not really looking to improve somebody's memory at all. We're looking to help them continue to enjoy their life and make the most of it.
Okay. You had mentioned skilled nursing, and again, some people don't know that term. So that's the same as a nursing home then?
Yes, a skilled nursing facility, a SNF, SNF, is the same thing as a nursing home.
Okay. Because I think so often, I remember when I first went out, I mean, I'm familiar with the terms and stuff now, but when I was first looking for my mom, there was a lot of stuff that people just use their jargon that I think families don't always
Right.
know. And so it's
Yeah.
important. It's really important too to find, I think, a community that's going to speak your language or educate you on theirs so that you've got a good communication base, on that. Now, another question I know that I get a lot of people asking me is, well, what's the cost to these things? And I would imagine that's going to vary throughout the country and throughout the world. But can you give us any ideas? Because one is families are always worried about the cost. And then two, of course, is who the heck's going to pay for it? How's that happening?
Yeah, assisted living does tend to be pretty expensive. It is private pay, which means the, Medicare, Medicaid are not going to be able to help. And it totally depends on the place. But I'd say most probably start around the $6,000 a month mark that I have seen across the board.
Okay. And then for like memory care or skilled nursing, how do those work?
Well, memory care, that would be the $6,000 a month mark that I'm talking about.
Okay.
So dementia care, memory care, whatever you want to call it, is licensed as assisted living.
Okay.
So that kind of, to clear that up a little bit. So that it would be about the $6,000 a month mark. I don't know about just pure assisted living. I don't really work in just non-memory care. Skilled nursing would probably be about $10,000 a month, but Medicaid and Medicare do help with this. So sometimes you'll see people who are not able to afford assisted living. They transition into a skilled nursing facility or quote unquote a nursing home.
Okay, great. Thank you. The terms are, they just overlap so much out there. And they've changed over the years too, in terms of what people call themselves, which I think makes it even more confusing.
Very confusing. Yeah.
To the general public. Now, is there help that people can get, so one of the things I know that some places have like a waiver system where they can get some assistance where they maybe normally wouldn't be able to. Are you familiar with that and how that works at all?
So that's actually a Minnesota thing.
Okay.
And you're in Minnesota, right, Larry?
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool Minnesota program that I didn't know about until I worked with a company in Minnesota. It really depends on your state. So generally speaking, no, there isn't really a lot of help, which is a big problem because we have more and more aging people and the cost of senior living is crazy. So there's going to have to be something done about that, just like the cost of education in this country is insane. The cost of senior living is crazy as well. So there's going to have to be some major shifts coming here real soon, probably just federally, to make these things more affordable.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I know I hear about that, but and again, every state is a little bit different. And I know California, uses their, what is it, Medi-Cal out there. So they have a little different verbiage than what the rest of the country does. So everything we're saying kind of take with a grain of salt, because you got to figure out what it is.
You got to research. You got to research your state, unfortunately, which really does not make it easier.
No. I know here in Minnesota too, we have a senior linkage line that people can call, and that can be helpful just as a base in terms of what's paid and what's not, and what are amenities. And you can get that in a print form, or they can, send you to the resource directory itself. And I'm not sure if that's in every state, but it is again such a need for a lot of hand holding in this process because it's so overwhelming, to figure this all out. Let's discuss a little bit about some of those really difficult kind of questions that families go through with their loved one as the disease progresses. So one I'm going to talk about is driving. And I would imagine you hear this a ton from people that you consult with, just like I hear it all the time. When do you know when it's time? And when you think it's time, then what the heck do you do with that? How do you approach it?
So I always tell families if they've been thinking about it, it's probably time. Meaning if they've been thinking about moving someone into dementia care, it's probably time. If they've been thinking about taking the keys, it's definitely time. If you wouldn't want that person driving the car with like their grandchild in the car, then they definitely shouldn't be driving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big thing. When it comes to taking the keys, there's a lot of ways to do this. But one of the easiest ways is to disable the vehicle and say that you were going to take it to the dealership or a mechanic to get it fixed, and then just never return it.
Mm-hmm.
But really, at that point, you need to start looking at care for this person. If they're not even really safe enough to drive, they're not taking care of some of their activities of daily living, bathing, eating properly, getting up, getting dressed. These are all things where it's time to consider a different lifestyle situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, I've heard people do a lot of different things, from taking the keys away to getting rid of the battery to giving the car to a grandchild, or like you said, ending up selling it, but saying that you've taken it someplace else and then not returning it. Now, what about like testing? Because people a lot of times get pushback from their loved one saying, hey, I'm perfectly fine. Have you dealt with people actually going through a testing procedure or talking to the doctors or even the police on this?
So 99% of my clients are senior living companies, but I do, a great deal of, I have a lot of content, my books and everything are for families. So, but what I did before I got into consulting for senior living companies was an internship back in like 2012, where I tested people for different causes of dementia. I did psychometric testing. So with the testing, it's always good to go through the battery of cognitive tests, but it is not mandatory. Meaning if it's going to be a real trial and tribulation to get them to cognitive testing, I would not force the issue. If it's just going to cause more strife, it's really a cost benefit analysis. Like, is it going to give you the information that you need? And if not, then let's not cause a bunch of stress trying to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. I just had somebody call me the other day on that. What do we do with my parent? My mom is saying this isn't worth us putting them through, and I'm not quite sure. I'm in the industry. I'm kind of leaning towards that. And I pretty much gave the same advice as well. It really is about, when you're looking at quality of care, that
right.
whole comfort piece. The other thing I wanted to mention with driving and taking keys away and things like that can be really tough is, approach the topic earlier on when the person can still be part of that conversation in terms of, I found this really helpful. And I would love your thoughts on this, but just having them either write themselves a letter, or a lot of them nowadays are just doing a video to say, no, when it's in exactly what you said, when I don't feel safe driving my grandkids in the car, then it's time for my keys to go away. And they all say, I don't know if I'll remember that I wrote that letter or that that's me in the video, but they're hoping that it will at least reduce the stress on the family in terms of making that decision, that they were in on that. What do you think of doing something like that as a family?
I don't see that working at all, because really that's them trying to prove, like the person, they're cognitively able to create the video at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
when they're not cognitively able to create the video, they're also cognitively not able to understand it. So I have a feeling that's going to cause some serious stress watching that video. They're going to be like, wait, what the hell? Like, when did I record this?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't foresee that going great. That to me is kind of just like another way of people trying to prove to somebody with dementia that they have dementia, which
Mm-hmm.
really is never the goal. So getting that person to admit that they need help
Mm-hmm.
probably won't happen. So instead, unfortunately, this is why they call it the family disease. The family has to find a way to get the
Mm-hmm.
care without the permission necessarily of the person with dementia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the video and stuff typically has been initiated by the people with the disease saying they want to be part of that decision. I don't think it's played out where any of them have had to utilize that at this point, but we talked about a lot about, would they recognize, and they said maybe not, but they were really, really concerned about alleviating some of the stress on the family for making that decision. And so a lot of it was the reminder to the family that, when I was cognitively able to have this conversation, I was in agreement with this. And again, there's so many family dynamics that come into play
Right.
with all this. It gets complicated quick. How about the decision to get help? One of the things, in the house. So, some people are living alone and might not have a spouse or a care partner with them. Others may, and, the care partner just might need a break. And same with the person living with dementia. But yet there seems to be a lot of resistance initially of, I don't want a stranger in my house. How do you deal with that?
Again, it really comes down to, making it happen, regardless. I like to try to get people to say, okay, well, I need this person here to help. They're going to clean the house. They're going to, blaming it on another reason why they're there, not to quote unquote take care of the person living with dementia.
Okay. Let's see. And then in terms of transitioning into, a care community, when do you think people should start kind of touring and checking out what's available?
If they've been thinking about it, it's probably time. That's always the answer. So that could be, a year in, that could be 2 years in, that could be 5 years in. It totally depends on the person and the family. Ideally, before they progress too much into the disease process to really benefit socially from being there.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think that people don't always see the social benefits. But, my mom lived in a nursing home for 14 years, and 11 of those were really, really good. And it was because she was social and she was engaged, and she fit in. And, the last 3 were more difficult because she had progressed so far, and that social interaction wasn't as great. Though I think she felt some comfort by just being able to recognize probably staff voices and basic routines and things that couldn't be communicated in those later time periods and things.
Right.
Now, I used to sell real estate for 25 years prior to stepping into this. And I would always encourage families to get tours prior to them thinking of the need coming, just so that they would get educated and see that what they thought places were like probably aren't really what they are. And again, back then, that was a long time ago. But a lot of people just thought everything was dark and dingy and everyone was in a wheelchair and nobody could communicate. And I mean, it was pretty much a negative view. What do you think about people getting out there kind of in front of feeling the frustration or the concern of maybe it is time?
I would definitely recommend checking out my third book, because it's all about this concept of when to move somebody, when and how to pick the right place. Because there's so much to look at and try to decide on that, even summing it up. That's why I always say, if you've been thinking about it, it's probably time, because it's so hard to sum up this complex thing for everybody, because it's going to be a different situation kind of for every family. I also have I have a lot of content about this on my site, but I also have what I call an e-kit, which is a downloadable thing called When Do I Move My Loved One to Memory Care? Because this is something that I get asked all the time. Just something that people are really stressed about and trying to deal with.
Oh, that's great. Now, your book again is called Caregiver's Guide to Memory Care and Dementia Communities. I love that idea of the e-kit for people to be able to check that out. Now, another question that I always hear a lot from people is dealing with, let's say, couples who have been married, 50, 60, some of them 70 years, and then having to be separated. Do you have any advice on how to deal with that? Because sometimes, as much as they feel the need, they grew up in an era where, till death do us parts, not really realizing that, caring could actually kill them before the person with dementia dies. We hear that story a lot. How do what are some recommendations there?
I think that really depends on the partnership, because sometimes I've seen people move together into senior living and it's not a good fit. Like, the one person doesn't have dementia, the other person does. The person without dementia is trying to kind of control the day-to-day of the person living with dementia. So it can get a little tricky. I always say, it's a case-by-case basis. But one thing you could do is the person living with dementia moves into the dementia care side of the building, and the person who does not have dementia moves into the assisted living side of the building, so that they can see each other, but the person, with dementia is able to get the stimulation and care that they need.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Again, that can get pricey in terms of people's situations. And like you said, every scenario is different, and not everybody has a great marriage, even if they've been together for as long as they've been.
Right.
These answers aren't going to be magic bullets to fix lifelong situations, and I think sometimes families think that they will. The other thing that I've seen too, and I get a lot of questions on this, is, as for some people with dementia, their personality might totally change, and they can't figure out, why is this person acting like this now when they never did before. Maybe becoming more sexually active, or their choice of words has changed significantly, where they never would have said that, never heard mom or dad talk like that in their life, and now they're dropping the F-bomb all the time. One, how do families deal with that, and how do communities deal with those situations as well?
In senior living communities, we're definitely used to that, so it's not really a problem. With families, I always just kind of, tell families, just remember that this person is not exactly the same person from before. This is a group of brain diseases. It's not that they want to say these things. It's not that they want to act this way. Dementia has changed some things about them. And sometimes that's very hard for people to come to terms with, because it's a little scary. You're used to something and you're seeing somebody totally different occasionally. Not always. Usually the filter goes away, but most people's personalities remain pretty intact.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Well, now I want to make sure that we give people your contact information. Now they can get your book. We've got the link there. Again, the name of the book is Caregiver's Guide to Memory Care and Dementia Communities. And I would imagine if they go to your website, there would be a link there too.
Oh, yeah.
correct? And
yeah, plenty of links. Plenty of links.
So you know what? I just realized here, I have your Instagram account, your Facebook, and your which are both Dementia by Day. And then your YouTube channel is under your name, Rachael Wonderlin. But I don't have, for your contact information, this is kind of funny, I don't have your personal website down here. I need to get that added. So can you give me that so our audience has that?
It's RachaelWonderlin.com, RachaelWonderlin.com. But honestly, if you Google some semblance of my name, I'll pop up. I'm pretty well filtered on Google. So if you Google me, you'll find me. If you Google Dementia by Day, you'll probably also find me.
Okay, sounds good. Well, is there anything that we didn't cover, Rachael, that we should?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. I think we did a lot.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time with us today. And again, everyone is, out there thinking about memory care and dementia communities. And it sounds like your book would be a wealth of information. And again, I would be personally one just to recommend get it before you need it. So you've got a better understanding, because then it's just going to be one more thing to go through when, if you go into this crisis situation. And so often I think families wait until it is a crisis situation. And then everybody feels out of control, and that's not good for anyone. So, plan ahead. Just get yourself educated, take the scary out of it, by getting informed. I just think that there is a lot of beauty in knowledge and putting things into place, realizing, again, like you said, every journey is going to be a little bit different. So, not everything is going to apply, but you don't know what path your journey is going to take. So gathering that information, getting connected, maybe to communities in your area that have support groups and things too ahead of time, can be really helpful as well for both of you.
Definitely.
So thanks again, Rachael, for being with us. Appreciate it very much. And you can go to her website, RachaelWonderlin.com. And again, there we've got listed her Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, along with a direct link to purchase that book. So thanks, everyone. We will talk soon. Bye now.
Thank you.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sylvester here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.